You can be born a natural leader. Management is a skill
that can be taught. If you're not part of the overall pattern of how we're trying to develop our leaders here, I can guarantee you your leadership capabilities are not going to be where we want them to be either. The thing I've heard more often than I care to remember is, oh, we'll promote them.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah, they're smart. They'll figure it out.
Welcome to Primal HR. Real people, real talk, real HR. The human side of work from the people who live it every day. Here are your hosts, longtime HR leader Terry Smith and people first strategist Leslie Lulham.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of Primal HR Podcast. I am joined by my co-host with the most, Terry over here, and today we are going to be talking about now you are the leader. How many times in an organization, and all of us have gone through it, you're no longer an individual contributor, you're promoted to a manager for the first time. Now what? What can you as an individual do? And more importantly, how can your organization support new managers?
It's a great thought, Leslie, and hi, everyone. It's great to be back for Season 2, Episode 5, and we're here to talk about that moment when you have your new manager on board, freshly minted, moved into the role, promoted, and has managed never before, and is now tasked with the activity of managing. So let's talk about a couple things that kind of lead up to that first. It's a fact. I mean, there's no disputing this, that oftentimes promotions happen because individual contributors do great individual work. And when that happens, most organizations, or many organizations, I shouldn't say most, many organizations simply don't have the means to really reward that. They can't, budget-wise, necessarily compensate them at a higher level. Perhaps they may have even capped out in the level that they're in. And they don't really have a pathway other than, let's make them a manager. The things that go wrong with that are, number one, the person in question may never have experienced management in any form other than what they're experiencing at your company. Two, and this is the real frustrating thing for me, the person will get promoted, and the expectation is that they will still do that great individual contributor work that got them the promotion in the first place. So now you have not only somebody with no experience, but you also have somebody with no experience who's still expected to do all the cool stuff they did as an individual contributor and, oh, by the way, manage a team. And that's where the real kicker is, that oh, by the way part. Because typically, a lot of organizations don't invest the time and the energy to train people to manage people.
Right. You get promoted and they're like, okay, off you go.
Good luck.
Good
Happy
luck
landings.
And Godspeed. And I think one other important call out, and it's kind of sad how long it took me to realize this in my own career, because I've been, I like climbing the corporate ladder and doing, that's kind of, I got a big sense of pride out of that when I was early in my career. Some amazing individual contributors don't want to be managers.
Yes.
I assumed that. I assumed that for well over a decade. That's how you reward your best contributor. They become a team lead. Then they become a team manager. Until one day I was talking to one of my coworkers. We started-ish around the same time. I had gone the manager track, and this individual did not. We were chatting over lunch in the office one day, and I was like, well, what's next for you? Like, you've been here the same amount of time as me. Like, we both perform well. Like, when are you going to become a manager? And they said, oh, yeah, I don't want to be a manager.
Right.
And literally my mind was blown in that moment. How could you not want to be a manager? What do you mean? But it's not for everyone. And companies also need to do better, in my opinion, at making sure they retain those high-functioning individual contributors and reward them when they don't want to go to the management route. Not wanting to be a manager should not be a punishment.
Precisely. And you're absolutely right. There are plenty of people I've experienced as well that, given that opportunity would say, no, I don't want to manage people. I don't want those headaches. I see what happens to people who manage people. I see what happens when people who manage people struggle with it. And I don't necessarily always see how well the organization is or is not supporting them in that role. And quite frankly, I don't want any of that. I just don't. So thanks anyway. I'll be staying in my role.
Right.
So now I've worked in situations and I've built these where in the career progression tracks, right, you build a model for a management track and then you build a model for an individual contributor track. And I can tell you that even in organizations that don't have that formally, there are oftentimes moments of recognition where the executive will say, if we didn't have this person in this individual contributor role doing these things,
right,
we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
And we've done enough to be able to recognize this person individually so that we are finding ways to keep them engaged and keep them occupied. I can tell a story about an individual contributor at an organization I worked with who was literally the troubleshooter. If a product went awry in some fashion or form on the customer site, they would send him out and he would figure out what was going on. And he knew the product inside, outside, backwards, forwards, so he knew exactly what he was dealing with once he saw what the problem was, so he could come back and say, here's what we're doing. And he became, because of that ongoing experience, he became very valued in the organization. And I don't know how many years he worked there, but it was a long time. And they retained him simply because they treated him as that expert, as that he's going to save the day kind of person.
Definitely. I love to hear that, and I think it's important for leaders to acknowledge folks and to take it back to those new managers.
Right.
So you got the acknowledgement, you got the promotion. Like most people, their first time managing, you are, shall we say, less experienced in your career. I don't know about you. I wanted it. Like, my company announced the role internally. A bunch of us went out for it. It was a whole interview process. It was highly competitive. I ended up getting the promotion, which was very exciting. And then it was, now what?
Now what?
Now what? And I think there's a degree of, for all new managers and aspiring managers listening right now, there is some work you should be doing on your own. You should be doing what you can to educate yourself. Reading books, reading articles, learning what makes a manager successful. Hot take, if you read enough of them, they all say the same thing. But you have to read enough of them to know that they all say the same thing.
Right.
But companies, HR leaders, managers on the team where you're bringing in a new manager, you have to be able to get in there, put together a training program. That's ideal.
Yes.
That's ideal. If you can't, hey, I worked at startups. There often isn't budget for training programs. Or if you're on the HR side, you're fighting tooth and nail for a book budget, right? Like, it happens. Mentorship. Partner up with these new managers. Walk them through things. I mean, weeks into my first manager role, I had a termination that rocked my world. And I was very grateful to have supportive managers who all, like, they'd been in the game a while. I was like crying myself to sleep for days. And, they were able to be a reality check for me. But had I not had a veteran managers at the time, I don't know that I would have wanted to even stick with it, because it was, we all remember our first termination. I think
all too well.
You have to, it's just one of those things of being a manager.
Yeah.
But I know, Terry, you've built some of these training programs.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing that's really important. You're absolutely right. Mentorship is key, whether it's a formal mentoring program or whether it's something that senior leaders just take on as the right thing to do. Mentoring is incredibly helpful for new managers. And you're right. I've built programs like this. One in particular where we had a large organization and we developed a leadership training program, right? And the idea of it was to bring people from all levels of the organization into the training session, because what we did with that was we had new managers, people who were newly hired, people newly promoted, and then we had senior leaders in the same cohort. And the idea was the sharing of ideas and the development of mentor-based relationships.
I love that.
And the interesting thing about it, Leslie, was that many of the senior leaders really, really liked the idea, and they really signed up for it and really, really engaged in it.
That's so rare.
It is rare, and I feel fortunate and blessed that I had the opportunity to work with people like that. I will also tell you that there are senior leaders in the org who are like, I really don't have time for this. And we really had to lean into that to be able to say, look, you don't have the time not to do this.
Right.
Because if you don't, if you're not part of the overall pattern of how we're trying to develop our leaders here, I can guarantee you your leadership capabilities are not going to be where we want them to be either.
You can't tell an org, we are investing in leadership, management, training. We want everyone to be the best they can be. And then the top echelon of leadership doesn't participate.
Right.
The whole org, including your HR leaders,
Yes.
are looking at you, C-suite. And if you're like, I don't have time, then the rest of the company thinks that it's okay that they don't have time. And then excuse city starts to happen. My first company that I did become a manager at, they were so wonderful with manager training. They had annual leadership training. Everybody went, and then it kind of progressed with you. So first, like, I don't remember the name of the course. I will refer to it as like baby manager training, so now you're a leader, and it covered, how to work through interpersonal issues and how to motivate your team. And then as you kind of grew up in the org, this company had a lot of people that kind of grew up in the company, which was really cool to see. They kept doing manager trainings, and everyone was very engaged, which was really cool. And then I worked at huge enterprise companies, and they're like, here's the online training portal, go figure it out.
Right.
Which, don't threaten me with a good time. That is my jam. But there has to be some form to it. And like having a really great HR person who is invested in this and wants to help the new managers succeed is huge. And I think early on in our episode, you talked about they expect you to be an amazing individual contributor and now managing a team. And I think a lot of companies downplay the crucialness of being a good manager. And that was always wildly important to me. Having regular one-on-ones with all of my team. And I managed big teams. Like they direct reports into me, like 20, 30, sometimes up to 40 people. But when that was the case, my whole job, literally all day, every day, was one-on-ones, performance reviews, like annual review season. I was just gone for a quarter. But for me, if the expectation was also like be doing the work where you're pushing the buttons, and there's no way there aren't enough hours in the day. And you hear all the time, I'm very curious, Terry, what you're about to say here. What is the ideal amount of direct reports a manager should have?
Well, gosh, there's a ton of numbers out there.
You should see Tim's face right now. He's like, oh.
There's a ton of numbers out there, to be sure. My default is no more than 6. Really, seriously, because at that point, once you get beyond something like that, number 5, 6, 7, you are losing ground. You are losing bandwidth because you can't devote the kind of time that you need to devote to each of your direct reports and at the same time do your work. Right. And by the way, I'm going to come back to that piece of it for a minute, because the thing I've heard more often than I care to remember is, oh, we'll promote them.
They'll figure it out.
They're smart. They'll figure it out. They'll figure out how to manage people. You don't just figure that out. There might be a tiny percentage of the population that has a natural proclivity towards that. Tiny percent of the population, the vast majority of people that wind up in that situation, whether they want it or not, don't figure it out.
Yeah.
They need the help. And that can only add value to the organization's bottom line.
Right.
And I struggle with leaders who don't get that they just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think you just called something, it just made my mind light up.
Okay.
You can be born a natural leader. Management is a skill.
Yes. That can be taught. Yes.
But think of the most, what do the kids say? They have Riz. Is that cringe? That's really cringy. You should see Tim's face again. But you can be born with charisma and just be a motivational person and be able to lead people. That can come naturally. It can also be taught. However, the skill of managing, how do you conduct a one-on-one? What is the most effective way to communicate with somebody? Organizational psychology. Oh, I could go nerd out on this stuff all day. Those are learned things. Mm-hmm. Either you learn them from books, you can learn them from observation, you can learn them through mentorship, but they're a little bit different, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think those are skills. They can be taught. They can be learned. Leadership capability, leadership acumen can also be, to an extent, taught, although I think it's more shaping than teaching. Mm-hmm. But I think as far as just the sort of the blocking and tackling, if you will, the skill set of managing people and of managing teams and of managing interactions between one team and another team and between teams of teams and so on. Those are all things that are skills.
Yes.
That can be absorbed, learned, and executed. And when we did our training, that's what we focused on. We focused on the fundamental skills of managing people and managing groups. And I like to say we had a lot of success. I mean, I had people come to me and say, I've worked at this, that, or the other company. I've never seen anything like this.
That's amazing.
It was fun.
That's amazing.
It was a lot of fun.
I would go to your manager training.
I'd be happy to throw one sometime.
Yay. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in with us while we dissected So You're a Manager Now. Now what?
In the short amount of time that we've been together, I hope that you come away with something meaningful for yourself and, possibly for your team. And we're just glad to help. So if there are things that you think about afterwards and you want to learn more about it, feel free to hit us up. You know how to reach us here at primalhrpodcast.com. So reach out. We're happy to help.
Us on email, Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere there's a comment box, you will reach us. Up next, we are going to mostly hand the microphone over to Terry to discuss Now You Are Subject to Legal Action. Something that most everyone working in the HR world is at least going to have a little bit of exposure to, sometimes a lot. So join us.
Yes, step on in. It's going to be interesting.
You've been listening to Primal HR. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Join the conversation on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook at Primal HR Podcast. Show notes and more at primalhrpodcast.com. Got a topic or want to join us on the show? Reach out. Our email is hello@primalhrpodcast.com. We'll see you next time.